You are listening to Strength Over All, a weightlifting podcast. Welcome to episode 24 of Strength Over All. This is Rob.
And Zena.
Thank you for coming back. Really quickly, I do want to say, because I forgot to say this on the last one, that thank you to everybody who emailed or sent messages on Instagram or whatever asking where the hell we were. Because it was, I don't know, cool. Obviously, I see how many downloads or plays we get every episode, but it was cool to know that people like it enough to be like, yo, do it again.
Yeah, where you been?
Or don't stop.
Yeah. Believing.
So, yeah, thank you for that. And also thank you for the messages or comments or whatever that we got saying thanks for being back. You're welcome. So this is going to be one of the most loosely planned episodes we've ever done. Because yesterday, as the gym was closing, it was just Zena and I in here, and we were talking about getting her ready for nationals, which is now 5 training weeks away. 5 training weeks.
Oh, man. Time to book my tickets.
Right? Is that right? 5 training weeks?
Oh, man.
Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 training weeks. Wow.
Time to make my goal board.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what we were talking about. Is she said, you know, she had a lot of stuff that she wanted to go over, and we started talking about it. And I was like, you know what? This would be perfect conversation to just have on the podcast. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So, Zena, obviously you've done a national meet, but we're getting ready for nationals, which is the, you know, highest meet that you can do in the United States past getting to like an international level meet. And let's just go through some of the stuff that we were talking about yesterday, because I think it's really good for people, even if you're not getting ready to go to nationals for the first time or whatever, if you're just getting ready for a local meet, or you think I want to do a local meet in 3 months, it's the thought processes that you have, I think, are like what an athlete's thought processes should be going into this. So let's just talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So mid-training yesterday, especially after we essentially did kind of like a max out or a heavy 1-rep day, you know, as I was going through training, I just had different thoughts. And of course, it wasn't the time to really bring it up. So I was like, okay, at the end. So different thoughts. So we have a meet coming up in 2 weeks, 2 weekends.
Yeah, 2 weekends.
A local meet. And so there's different, of course, thought processes or goals of what, you know, either openers or really our objective of what that meet is going to fill. And then, of course, nationals. I want to set goals of either, you know, what day do I want to get there? What session is our goal? You know, what totals do I need to have to be in a certain session or what have you? And so it just kind of started that conversation of, okay, so if I'm going to focus on something, or what should my focuses be over the next few weeks? And that's really where it kind of got us started. Like, all right, we have a meet in 2 weeks. What do we want to think about? And, you know, that's where we kind of went into the thought process of consistency, of course, consistency with higher weights. And, you know, these next 2 weeks are going to show us where we're going to open. But of course, I asked you.
Well, that was your first question.
Yeah.
Is what do I need to put my sights on to open with? Mm-hmm. And while I understand that that's how you work,
yeah,
is that you need those numbers.
Yeah.
To just tell yourself, like, you know, day in and day out, like, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do.
Yep.
I feel like it would be irresponsible of me to say yet.
Yeah.
Because yesterday was really the first time we tried. Mm-hmm. You know, granted, you've gone heavy.
Right.
But so our first part of that conversation was, what should you try to open with in 2 weeks, which will be, you know, roughly 1 month away from competing at nationals.
Yeah.
And I said, let's wait at least another week before we decide that. Like, you know, because I've got an idea in my head of like at nationals, we'd like to hit in the mid 70s and the mid 90s for openers. Mm-hmm. But as far as in a couple weeks from now, you need to just compete again.
Yeah.
Like, you need to just do a meet and get used to doing the lifts on command. Mm-hmm. And let's just see kind of where those numbers fall as we get into that, because the numbers are largely irrelevant at that meet.
Yeah.
You know, if you can win some money, that would be
cool.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
So, yeah, that was the first part, is like, you're thinking, okay, I'm a little over, or I'm like a month and a half away from competing at nationals. So what should I be able to do in the next couple weeks? Mm-hmm. And how is that going to help you get ready for, your meet after that?
Yeah, absolutely. And then my second/third question was really, what should my main focus be over the next 5 weeks? If, what is that one thought that every day I step into the gym, I'm thinking, like execute or, focus or, just something that I think every athlete kind of has to have a word or either a saying or just a main focus of, maybe what's been something that you struggle with or just that thought that kind of gets you in every day and day out. And you can put on that goal board, which I make a goal board almost all the time. But every time I have a meet or a goal, I pretty much put it right next to my bed that says like what I want to open with at nationals, when my next meet is, and then usually like a word or a saying or a thought of, what I need to make sure that I'm thinking about every single day I come in here so that I can make sure that I'm, on track for the big bang.
So what I was about to make a joke. I don't know. So many ideas about being in the Bible Belt, then Donald Trump, and anyway,
down the rabbit hole we go. Good thing I said Big Bang.
Yeah. So what did you write down? Have you done it yet?
No, I haven't. I kind of thought about two different. I know that when we talked yesterday, you'd brought up consistency. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's a little bit longer than what I like to say in my head, like just not one of those words. Be consistent.
Yeah.
So one word that always kind of comes to my mind when I'm thinking of being consistent is to execute. Like execute our game plan. Execute a lift. Of course, I like to say in my head like perfect lifts.
I understand why you have trouble saying consistency.
Yeah, right. I need
like
two syllables tops. And so I try to, one word that I like is execute, regardless if it feels good, if it feels bad. I just need to make sure that I execute our plan and execute a perfect lift and make sure that I'm making them regardless if I think it feels good or feels bad.
Yeah.
And so that was just one of those that I've recently been saying. But of course, I was thinking about what, from a coaching standpoint, from you see me every day, like if there's anything that I've been slacking on or, need to like kind of be like, all right, now is time, forget the last 12 weeks. Now's the time to, think about this.
Well, and I think what I said to you yesterday was that you need to learn that you are strong enough to do the lifts that you're not doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That, because let's just use your training yesterday for an example.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
No, please.
You attempted a 77 kilo snatch twice.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yep.
2 times?
Yep.
And missed
mm-hmm.
both. But the first one, which this is something that you do, and I think a lot of people do, in here specifically, I'm sure all over the world.
Yeah.
But you do, 80 snatches in a week.
Yeah.
And so I think everybody kind of gets in the habit of just running through the motions.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I do a snatch now.
Yeah.
It's like bar come off floor, I snatch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like you're just going through the motions. You're not actually lifting that weight.
Right.
And usually what that means is like people, when my perception of your lift is that you're just going through the motions, you're not actually lifting the weight, is you just like, you touch your hips, you get under it. Like, you don't actually spend the time pulling a heavy weight high enough. You don't, stay connected to the floor long enough, whatever the reason. But I know that's something that I've said to you a couple times, and I feel like it's worked well for you to think about like, no, I can't think about like, well, I don't know if this is what you think, but in my mind, it's like, you can't really think of, okay, now I just snatched this. You got to think like, I've got to wait until the bar's at my knees, and when the bar's at my knees, I have to, transition towards the hips, and when the bar touches my hips, then I have to pull high. And obviously, you're not going through that. Like, you're not going through that while you're lifting,
right?
But you need to think about it that way before, so that you let yourself do the correct things at the correct time,
right?
So all of that being said, you attempted 77 twice. The second one was a much better pull. But there's no reason you shouldn't be able to snatch 77 pretty consistently right now, even though it's only 3 kilos under your best.
Right. And I'd made every single lift up to that point, and I'd made 73 like it was, paperweight right before that.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
It was beautiful. So So there's,
Hair flip. Thanks.
So, I told you to pull 80 thinking, okay, maybe that'll give you the confidence that as long as you just do it, you'll do it.
Yeah.
And you fucking almost took your nose off.
Yeah.
Pulling 80.
Yeah.
And obviously I know how strong you are, but it surprised me that you pulled it that high. I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
Right, right.
Like I didn't expect you to pull it that high. Like that was high enough for it to be a power snatch.
Right.
So that was like part of what I told you was you can do it, but you got to know you can do it,
right.
and you have to let yourself pull it correctly. And I mean, that's kind of like a side note, but one thing that I think is like really important about lifting heavy weights is you have to learn how to do it when it's heavy, because that's totally different. Like say, you squat 100 kilos, you can probably snatch 35 or 40 like it's absolutely nothing. But then when you get up to 50 or 60% roughly of what you can squat, it's like, well, damn, that weight feels heavy off the floor.
Right.
And that's when people fall into those traps of just going through the motions, not completing a pull, not like actually doing what feels like a slow deadlift. It shouldn't be like a deadlift, but that's what it's going to feel like when it's a max snatch. Or once you're technically good enough to lift weights that are heavy, I should say. And like that's probably one of my favorite things to say, that I'm sure you've heard me say it to either you or somebody else 100 times. It's like, it's not fucking heavy. Right. If it were heavy, you couldn't snatch it. Yeah. Like, think about it. Like, that's not a heavy weight. So stop acting like it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's true, but when you're good enough, you are going to snatch heavy weights. Yeah. And same with cleans. Like, when you're good enough, basically, as long as you can just accelerate, you can do a clean. Right. Like, if you're capable of speeding up and you get it like 1 inch above your hips, you could do it. And that's fucking hard to learn. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to learn that when you're straining just to get it to the knee, that you're going to commit to accelerating and pulling and then throwing yourself under it. I know that's not right. But committing to getting into that bar fast, like, that's fucking hard to learn.
Oh, yeah. And I think that that's the hardest for, lifters that start, is just being able to commit even when everything either in your head is telling you like, oh no, this feels heavy, like I'm not sure, especially with jerks. Yeah. Is like, if you just commit to it, there's no reason, with technique, of course, that you can get under the bar. And I think
all of this assuming you're technically proficient.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that that's the biggest thing that you see with anyone that, consistently miss jerks, is you're just thinking about how heavy it is and you don't commit. Your head's back. The bar might have a perfect bar path, but if you keep your head back, or you're worried about getting your head through, and you aren't committing, then there's no way that you can make it. The bar's not going to be where it needs to be. Yeah. So.
Well, and that's, what I jokingly say to Kelly is, you got to use your muscles on this one. Like, you got to like actually pull it. You got to actually throw it through the roof, and she got a 3 or 4 kilo snatch PR. Yeah. And it was like awesome. Yeah. And then, but that's what I told you when we were talking about this stuff yesterday, is that you've got to learn to wrap your head around the fact that 80 needs to be routine. Right. That currently that is the most you've ever done. And you can't discount the fact that you've never gone past that. Right. But your strength has improved so much from when you did those numbers, like from when you went 80 and 98, or that was roughly what your numbers were at the end of the year. Yeah. Yeah, that your strength has improved so much. Now, my responsibility is to program it in a way that you learn to lift the weights that you're now capable of lifting. Yep. And that's what I told you your mindset needs to be, is that you can do it, but it's going to be fucking hard. Yeah. Like, no matter how strong you are, you pull a weight off the ground that you've never put over your head, that's going to be hard. Right. So, yeah. Yeah, and I think, too, it's one of those things that probably for any athlete, especially, is as you train and you may not be lifting, those heavy weights as much, but you might be squatting and things like that, is kind of, it's interesting the more I thought about it, how that fear kind of creeps in, kind of like, you don't think of it actively as fear, but you're like, oh, man,
you're nervous before a lift and you're like, oh, I don't actively.
Well, you're thinking about it a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah, I guarantee you it doesn't even cross your mind when you're snatching 45.
Right.
Nothing crosses your mind.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think we all have those numbers where you're like, oh man, I'm above 70.